Hi, guys. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm here with my good friend Kate Horrell, who, Kate, we've known each other forever, but I feel like we just finally had a chance to sit down and really catch up in the past couple months, first at the luncheon and now. But before that, it was like years and years and years ago at that first military blogging conference. What was that, like 15, 20 years ago?
It was a long time ago, Sue.
A long time ago. We're really aging ourselves, but that's a conversation for another day. But we've known each other forever, so I really love being able to catch up with you because now you're an author. She's also a financial educator, financial coach, and she's a spouse of a retired naval officer. So catch us all up, Kate. A lot of people don't know you, so maybe tell us a little bit about your military spouse journey.
Sure. So I married my spouse. We started dating right before he commissioned, and we got married 2 years later. He served for 30 years, so we were in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
And he has been retired for 4 years now. Along the way, we picked up four kids and some cats and two moving vans full of stuff.
Along the way. So tell everybody a little bit about your professional career. When you started on this journey, where did you think you were going to be? What did you think you were going to do professionally? And then where did you end up?
So when we got married, I quickly realized that my professional dreams were going to have to be altered a little bit. And like a true military spouse, particularly back in the day, right? We didn't have remote work. We didn't have the types of programs that exist now. So you literally reinvented yourself every time you moved. And it just so happened I had a series of jobs that were in financially related fields. I did lots mitigation for a mortgage bank. I did some tax preparing. And then a series of events brought me to writing for military.com at a now defunct webpage called Spouse Buzz. And then military.com decided they wanted to bring together this personal finance channel for military and veteran community. So I raised my hand and I said, "Hey, listen, this is something I can do." To which Ward very wisely said, "No, no, we want someone with real experience." And I leaned in so hard and I was like, "I have real experience. Let me tell you." And so I started writing about personal finance for the military and veteran community, and it is really just evolved. That was over 15 years ago, dating ourselves again, into this whole business, right? I'm a subject matter editor, like a technical editor for a DoD contractor. I write for small things like Military by Owner. I still work for military.com on a contract basis. I have my own products and services. It's a big fun.
Okay, so you're just glossing over, you have your own products and services. Tell us about the book you just wrote.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is making sure that people understand and use the educational benefits that the service member earned through their military service. So that includes everything from TA to my CAA, what the service member is still serving, and then the GI Bill and other VA education benefits. And so I give these talks on this subject. And after every talk, people would come up to me and say, "Do you have a book?" Because that was so much information. And I didn't. So I finally hired an editor because everybody needs a babysitter. And we got this book out. It is available on Amazon, but it's on back order because I guess it's doing okay.
Nice.
College Finances for Military Families. And it is the tools that you need to build your family's financial plan for how you're going to pay for college when you have these military benefits to integrate into the structure.
That's awesome. I love that it sounds like you became an accidental entrepreneur. Like you did not set out to be an entrepreneur and you just kind of
Absolutely not.
fell into it. So I guess the question I would ask you then is, as your business started scaling, because it certainly started scaling, because you started with one thing and then you just expanded and developing products, services, a book. So as your business scaled, how did you prepare yourself for the next step? I think that's a question everybody would have. I mean, I know that you mentioned it involved learning new skills in your write-up, and I hope everybody goes to the website and reads her write-up, because our conversation right now is kind of um, kicking off from where the write-up leaves off. But I'm okay. So anyway, so I know you mentioned that it involved you learning new skills, but some of that is not really intuitive. Like people don't necessarily know what new skills they need to take the next step. So did you outsource some of those functions to small business professionals, or did you get like more training and certifications to allow you to do it?
A little bit of both. I'm a terrible outsourcer. It is a place that I really need to get better because it is a important step for people, but it's a hard step, and I put my little toes in it and then I take them back out again. I am constantly learning new skills, whether I'm going to a conference and sitting in a session that teaches me how to do something, or I'm watching a YouTube video. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, actually. Like, how do I make my Canva thing do the thing that I'm trying to make it do? I also do lean on my family a lot. My husband reads my proofreads my emails and was the final copy editor on my book. I have a tech savvy kid who will come in when I'm staring at my computer, like, I'm going to do the thing that I'm going to do. I have one that helps me with some graphic design when when it suits her work schedule. And I just really I sign up for a lot of courses online. I don't necessarily finish them all.
That's okay.
Like, I don't know how many courses one person can take at a time.
I guess I mean, tell us when you're done. But I think that's okay. No, I love it. And I love I love your emphasis on self-awareness because I think that's so important because what your answer tells me is that it's not a one size fits all thing where, for me, I love outsourcing because it was part of my business model, which is like I wanted to create an opportunity to provide spouses with more opportunities. So I outsource everything I possibly can because I feel like I'm giving an opportunity to another military spouse. It took time though, because that control freak in me is like, oh, but you can't tell them how to
Exactly.
do it. Like you have to like working with contractors, you have to just give them the project and then they do it however they will. It does take time, but I love how self-aware you are. And like you know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. But I also know that that can't have been easy because sometimes like, and I'm looking in the mirror when I say this, those self-doubt gremlins, they're so loud. Like they're always telling you you can't do something. Like when your business is getting ready to scale, they're like, "Who are you to scale your business? You should be down here. Like this is where you're comfortable, and this will help you balance with your husband's career and your kids' needs. And like you should stay this small." How did you stay so true to what you decided was a priority in your life and kind of either ignore those gremlins or figure out how to live with them?
That is a great question. As I said in the write up, in case people don't get the chance to read it, struggled a lot over the years with people telling me and readers and people who need help asking me, hey, can you give us more? And it was this really always a struggle. There were many times that my husband would come home from a 12-hour workday and walk in the door and I'd be like, I need to go work now. Right. Which is kind of no way to live, but that was the reality of our situation at the moment. But at some point I sat down when I belonged to a mastermind group and my friends were like, you need to hire a driver to drive your kids back
Mhm.
and forth to school and to all of their activities and to their doctor's appointments. And I had to really take a moment and decide where my priorities lie, what reflected my values. And like I did this as a strategic exercise, right? I wrote down my values on a piece of paper. I drew them in a circle. And this is an exercise I do with people to talk about money, but it's also an exercise you can do to talk about time. Are you spending your time and or your money on the things that you wrote down as your values? And ultimately, my kids and my marriage are a higher priority than my job. Because I made that decision really intentionally, it became a lot easier to make decisions. Because whenever I would have that self-doubt, which came in just about every single day, I would say, no, this is a reflection of the things that are important to you. Be true to the thing that you believe in. Don't get sidetracked by all the shiny things or by the external pressures of what other people think that you should do, you know, so that was for me the point. And that doesn't mean that there are not compromises because there will always be compromises. No one can give everything that they value as much time as they think that it deserves. And there's no right answer. I totally probably should have worked more than I did in retrospect,
But it
but
also
that was
changes.
just, it changes over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't recognize, or maybe they're just so in it that they're like, oh my God, it's gonna be like this all the time. But it changes. Like your priorities when your kids are 5 versus your priorities when they're 15 and 25 are very different.
Totally different.
And so it's almost like people always ask, can we have it all? And I'm like, you can absolutely have it all, just not at the same time.
Right.
And I still stand by that because it's like when our son was younger, and people are gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, you guys are so outdated. Like you're that's so yesterday." But that was our reality. Like when our son was younger, we did not have the money. We got married very young. We did not have the money to hire help. And so it was me. I was the childcare. There was no childcare available. And then I was volunteering for free childcare. And that's how I got started on my advocacy route. And it was like, um, but it changed because now, because we did have our son younger, it meant that he left the house when we were still young. And so then I could pivot to the career. And so I feel like I've had a full career and I'm still in my career space, but I didn't start as young as a lot of these military spouses are able to now, which is so great. Like I think it's so amazing that they're able to have it all more than we could at once. But no, I think you're absolutely right about the self-awareness. And I love that exercise about like just writing it out because I think you might think you intuitively know what's important to you, but it's not until you actually sit down and stratify things that you really know what's important to you. So, with that level of self-awareness though, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask, were there any surprises about retirement and life after the military? Even though you were, I mean, financial coach, you're prepared, but it's always different when it's your own.
There have been a lot of surprises. I think the thing that I hope people take away from this conversation that we have is that life after the military rarely looks like you think that it was going to look for whatever reason. In our case, other mother's, uh, my husband's mother has some health issues that have changed what our retirement is looking like. And that's the reality for a lot of people, right? You're leaving the military in your 40s or your 50s. And so your parents are a little bit older than you. And so they maybe start taking up a lot of time. Also, the reality when it comes to your parents is that when you're not in my friend Doug uses the phrase fog of work, and I think it's really interesting. He says that people, when they leave the military, right, they need to learn how to remove the fog of work so that they can see their life. And you start seeing things like your parents' health that maybe you couldn't see because you were stationed in Germany and you were only there for a week every Christmas. And now that you're able to spend more time with them, you see things differently, or you see things in your relationship differently. So it's really an interesting journey. I'm I'm mostly enjoying going, watching it unfold, but it is definitely looks literally nothing like we expected it to look like.
Yeah, I don't even think we had expectations. We're like, it's just gonna be different. And we had some friends who were older than us and they had done it before us. And they were like, I know this is gonna be hard for you to believe, but there is life after the military. And I'm like, that's not hard for me to believe. I just can't imagine what it would be like. And she goes, because, like when you retire, the military has been the majority of your life for many of us. And so she's
Mhm.
like, but in the great span of your life, that for us 22 years, for you 30 years, is going to be just a portion of your life.
Right.
But it's hard to imagine right before you go through it. But we could talk about this all day. I'm not going to let you go though without asking for some advice as a financial coach, but not for me, but for like the whole community. Because, we talked about it a little bit. The communities, um, not in, it is a little bit in flux, but it's a little bit unstable right now because like all the foundations that we thought were true, safe, and there just aren't. And so people who used to pretty confidently be able to say that they had a good job, like a good stable job, are now worried about losing their jobs. And so I feel like with our military community, like just looking at feedback and the stories that we're hearing from our professional military spouses, they're concerned about one, losing their jobs. They're concerned about being able to make the bills. And I mean, they're cutting back. What advice would you have for them? These people out there who are just really concerned about being able to fulfill all their obligations, their financial obligations, and also fund life after the military.
Yeah, I would say for starters, you need maybe go back to basics And if you have been fortunate enough that you didn't really need to learn the financial basics of tracking your spending or planning your spending, having specific savings, an emergency fund for genuine emergencies, but then I call them goal savings. Some people call them buckets, but right, like we have an account for the next time we need to buy a car that money goes into every month. We have this year, I finally went back to it. Used to be I saved money for Christmas when the kids were little. And then I stopped because I was like, oh, I feel like Christmas isn't as big a deal. But now that they're bigger, now that Christmas involves travel and boarding animals, and it's, now when we go out to dinner, we're not spending $85 at Friendly's. Now we're spending, because we have a large family, right? Dinner might be $250 if we get offer something for Christmas, $300 easily. So, the building blocks of knowing what you spend, having an emergency savings account, having a spending plan, having those targeted savings for things that aren't emergencies, but are expenses that are going to come up. New tires shouldn't be an emergency because we all know that we need new tires someday. But if you don't have the money, it absolutely is an emergency because you got to go to work and you need to be safe. And then start figuring out how you can shift your financials priorities a little bit to be a little bit more resilient. A lot of us, particularly when we're doing well, and I've been guilty of this at points in my life, we let things get a little loosey goosey because the money's there and I'm not having any problems paying my bills. And if that's fine, if you're doing it in a strategic way, in a way that you have a plan for the things that are essential, right? You keep your spending in two buckets. This is the important stuff, and then this is the fun stuff. And as long as this one is always manageable, you can push this one aside if the situation requires you to. Where people really get into trouble is when the requirements bucket gets too big. And then if there's any change in your income, you're really in a pinch, right? So that's a struggle, right? It's really easy to get tied up in, particularly depending on where you live, right? You could take on a huge mortgage payment. I mean, the size of mortgage payments nowadays can be astonishing, and that's not negotiable.
Yeah, even rent is astonishing.
Even rent, they want you to pay your rent or your mortgage every single month, right?
Audacity.
So I don't know if that answered your question, Sue. I
Yes,
feel like
no,
I
it
got off
does.
on a few tangents there.
No, it really does because it's not sexy. It's just go back to basics.
It really is. And it is really easy to allow yourself to get a little distracted when things are going okay. And I think most people are guilty of that. And it's okay as long as you've built enough structure into it that your distractedness doesn't mean that you're taking on all of these obligations that you can't necessarily promise that you're going to be able to support into the future.
And I mean, I just want to throw this out there, and I'd love your take on it too. But for people who do find themselves in a situation where they have emergencies they can't fund, don't forget about your service relief societies.
Absolutely. Definitely for your active duty folks. I think every branch works with retirees. There's one branch I'm not 100% sure about, but they can be a great resource. Also, in true emergencies, there are a number of organizations out there that can help with different types of expenses. And maybe there's a blog post I need to do in that. I just had that idea, Sue.
Well, if you do, make sure you post it and link it on your comments so that people can see.
I sure will.
There you go. Well, if you guys have questions for Kate that we didn't touch on in the interview, please put them in the comments and I'll make sure to get them to her. She's really good about responding. So pretty please do that. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Kate. I know that you were not feeling 100%, so we really appreciate you rallying and doing this interview with us. And thank you so much to our friends at USA for making these conversations possible. And we hope to see you guys back here next week. Bye, guys.